Hello and good afternoon. My name is Olivia Jack, and I will be talking about a project called Wobble Web. Wobble Web is a graphics editor and coding environment for making and sharing small scale websites. It runs directly in the browser and is especially made to work with phones and touch devices. I will be showing some of the features of Wobble Web and explaining some of the goals of the project. It is very much a work in progress. So I will also talk about some of the features we hope to implement in the coming weeks and months. And so with Wobble Web, you can drag elements around on the screen. You can delete elements. You can edit the content of them. Hello. Again, from a desktop or mobile device. You could clone elements. And the idea with the visual portion of the editor is to make it as easy as possible to make a sort of small collage-like website and to directly manipulate HTML by moving things around on the screen. Additionally, there's also a code editor, a split pane code editor, and so the code on the right corresponds to the visual elements on the left. And when I click on an element, it highlights just the code relevant to that element. And when I move an element, it directly changes the code and also highlights which elements of the code have changed. And so I could, for example, with this element, I could decide to edit it over here. My element. I could edit it over here, or I could go and edit it over here. Editing code. Now I'm editing the code of the element, whereas before I was editing the element within the visual editor. Similarly, I could also edit any of the properties, the style properties of the element directly from the code editor. So, for example, there I'm changing the font size. And I think showing this, just showing the live updates is an interesting entry point to HTML. So yeah, you might have noticed then when I click outside of an element, the editor switches to show the entire document, whereas when I click on an individual element, it just shows the code for that element. And so what I could do is I'm gonna go to the whole thing and delete most of the code so that we have less things here. And this is just a very free form HTML editor, so I could just copy and paste things, for example, and now I have two of this element. Or I could sort of add my own more complicated HTML into this page. So for example, I could add, I'm adding here an iframe that happens to have its own code editor inside just to be fancy. And the environment sort of is able to maintain the state of more complex elements like this. So even though I'm mutating the HTML. It's not and there's kind of a complex process going on within this element. It's not resetting or re-rendering everything every time. It's sort of mutating the HTML of the page in order to preserve as many elements as possible. And this makes it very, I think, useful with other tools for generating HTML. So I could copy any HTML into here and then have this more gestural interface for interfacing with each of the elements. And yeah, I didn't show as well. We have a set of other UI elements for editing different parts of each properties of each element. So could edit the background color, and it's I think we just think of this as different ways of editing the same information with the goal of making things as smooth and consistent and playful as possible for the user. And so here there's some slider interface into these elements. They can still be moved around. I'm gonna go ahead and delete this. And so because this entire system is just based on HTML and HTML elements, it opens some interesting possibilities, and specifically for integrating with existing HTML tools. And a way of using this that we're really excited about is using existing browser development tools. And so I could open the browser developer tools here. And so, yeah, each browser has a HTML, sort of live HTML and JavaScript editor built in. And so what I could do is, for any of these elements on the page, I can just select it here. And then I could also choose to edit properties of it. So let's say I'm selecting this handcrafted and hand-coded element. So I could just, for example, use the browser. Oh, I guess that's actually the wrong element. Okay, there, I'm selecting the right element. I could just use the existing browser development tools to kind of, here I'm toggling different CSS properties. I'll toggle on the border radius, I'll toggle it off. I'll toggle on the box shadow, I'll toggle it off. And so as the projects move along, I think something that's become more exciting is, instead of creating a whole separate code editor, let's make use of this existing sort of structured editor that exists directly within the browser. And usually, you could edit the HTML or the JavaScript of any page, but you can't really save the output of what you've done. And so one of the simplest things that Wobble Web does is it persists all of the changes that you make using the browser-based developer tools that already exist. And so, yeah, the goal of this is to make use of these, augment the browser, which is already a very powerful development platform, but to augment that with a few things. So we're saving this. Let's see if I could add some letter spacing. Oh, that's that element. I'll change the letter spacing of this element, for example. And so here we're augmenting the existing capabilities of the browser and making them persist into the web page. I want to show another feature of that. So let's say in the code editor, I'm going to select this handcrafted and hand-coded element again. And I'm going to give it an ID. And now I'm using the Wobble Web code editor just because personally I find the freeform editor easier to use. Or maybe, well, we'll see. The freeform editor. So I'm going to give this an ID, my wobble, and you'll see everything, because everything's just listening to the same HTML document. You'll see it's changing in the developer tools. It's changing over here. I'm gonna change this text to just maybe we could just say hello. Say hello, and I'm gonna move this over there. Oh, and we have this here. I'm going to delete this one just to have less things on the page. And yeah, I've been a programmer for a really long time, and I am also a visual artist. And I find, some things such as positioning things on a page or direct manipulation or sort of free-form composition much easier using a gestural interface, movement in time as another example, and then I find certain things more easier from a coding perspective. And so a lot of this project is an exploration into combining those things in a live and usable environment, live, usable, playful environment. So here I've assigned this hello element. I've given it an ID, my wobble, down here. And so now I'll go to the console. Gonna get rid of the existing things, and I'm going to access that element in JavaScript. And so there I made sure that I got the element, and I'm going to make some copies of it. So now I made some copies of it, and I'm going to add those copies. And I made each copy was slightly offset. And so now I used the browser console, to write some JavaScript, and I could already kind of script my visual editor interface. And now I'm going to close this, and I can, start to I could still move all of these newly added elements around. And so, here's where personally I'm like, oh, I like to just see what looks good and stuff. I want to change something about this, about all of my little kind of pillbox elements that I have over here. So I'm going to go into editing the entire page mode. And let's say I want to change the background color, so I can do a kind of multiple selection in the text editor where I select every element. And now I'm going to go to the color section, and I can change the color here. So, ooh, that's kind of a nice color. And yeah, now I have my little hello boxes. I'm gonna I want to put my name here because I'm happy with where my website is going, so I'm gonna say bye Olivia over here. But maybe I want to change the background color. I like that one. And then I can also preview my website like this, and then I could share it. And I'm going to call it Hello Pillboxes. And so there's two ways of sharing. I could copy the link, which actually just stores the HTML code itself into the URL, so it's not going to any server or anything, but I can, here's my web page, or I can download the HTML code of this web page. There we go. And I could go ahead and open this, and here's my web page. And we're working on a feature to publish directly to Codeberg pages or GitHub pages, so you could directly from your phone make a little website and upload it, and it actually already works to even add images, which just get encoded as data URLs. But I want to go back to talking a bit about this, the potential of this as a coding environment. So right now, I would say it's really focused on kind of directly adding elements to the page and directly manipulating properties of those elements. And one thing we really want to lean into is to exploring the potential of this, the gestural interface. I think, and the gestural interface not just for directly moving elements, but for additionally extending the capabilities of HTML to have more complex properties. So for example, there could be an HTML element that multiplies any element that it touches, or there could be an HTML element that eats up any element that it touches, or that otherwise modifies any element that it touches, or that repeats, sort of like I did with the code here, but the idea would be that you could have a repeat clone element that would repeat another element on the page, and then but it could slightly modify with each iteration a given property. And so one of the next steps in this project is to really integrate web components or custom elements, which is an HTML specification for sort of defining your own elements. And the goal is to create more of a declarative syntax, to be able to, just by adding elements and positioning them, to be able to kind of perform higher level functional operations on existing elements. This is yet to be implemented, so there'll be lots of things to learn in that process. Additionally, with the custom elements, is to be able to do more complicated things that the web allows. And we also really want to explore multi-touch gestures, and sort of move away from a slider metaphor, which works really well with a mouse, but when you're on a multi-touch device, you could pinch and zoom. And so certain things like positioning become really easy. But what if, you could use those multi-touch capabilities to edit other things, such as like simultaneously edit font width, font type, and letter spacing just by using multiple fingers at the same time. And an additional thing in line with this gestural component is exploring kind of movements in time as a way of animating things. And so I think there isn't an idea with this is just to continue developing and continually kind of developing a useful tool for making these small websites. And yeah, thank you for listening.